afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another session of ENG4E, Term 2A, from Wassa Distance Education Center. I'm your instructor, Mike Laverty. Today is February 13th, 2023. We are on class number 5, still tackling Unit 1. So I'm hoping that we can go through key questions 9 through 15 today. So in the first couple of classes, we were just doing 1 or 2, but now we got things rolling, and we've introduced a lot of concepts. So I'm hoping that today's class I can get through several of these key questions, and then I want to talk about our culminating activity at the end of this week. So we are on to week 2 of classes in term 2A. So there are 9 weeks in total. No classes on Monday, February 20th, so that's my class and any other Wassa class, because that is, of course, Family Day. So the studio is not going to be open. The office will be shut down. And March break is from March 13th to the 16th, so we'll have no classes and no broadcasts. All right, so we are working on Unit 1. So we'll finish off Unit 1 at the end of this week. And then it should work out this way. I'm hoping that we can spend 2 weeks on every unit. So the first 2 weeks we'll tackle Unit 1. We'll finish Unit 2 at the end of week 4, and so on. And then I'm hoping that we can have 1 week, that'll be our final week, where I will prepare you for the final exam. And then, and then you write the final exam, after week 9. Or if you're an independent learner, you will write the final exam after you've completed units 1, 2, 3, and 4. So after I've got them back, I mark them. Then we talk to your learning center and we arrange for a time for you to write your final exam. But more on that as we get closer to weeks 8 and 9. All right, so if you're watching this on YouTube, just feel free to pause the screen and just take note of the ways that you can watch the course. You can watch and listen to it live. So if the only way you can access the class is through YouTube, that's fine. But as the course goes on, I'd love to see people access it live. And so you can phone in and to ask a question or to make a comment by phoning one of the numbers on the screen there, 1-800-465-7144. Or by phoning 737-4017. And, of course, you can listen to the radio. We are on 91.9 FM. You can listen to us on Bell ExpressVu, channel 972. And for the moment, I'm still working on the technical side of the Zoom broadcasts. But so I just for the time being, that is not an option, but we do have these 3 options, right? And so I will hopefully get an answer to that and figure out how to make that work for the coming broadcasts. If you look me up, Laverty Wassa, you'll find my YouTube channel and you'll find the playlists, and you'll see right here there's an ENG2A Unit 1. So all classes that talk about Unit 1 are going to be in that playlist, right here. And then everything from term, every class of ENG4E term 2A is going to be in this playlist. So I'm just trying to make it easier for you to find out what you need. So again, if you want to pause that screen, these are ways you can submit your work. Send an email to studentwork@nnec.on.ca and send it to mlaverty@nnecschools.org. Talk to your DEC, talk to your learning center if you have any questions about getting your work to myself or any other instructor you have at WASA. That's what they're there to do. You can also phone the studio you can also phone WASA in Sulikout and get some answers that way. You can take photos with your phone and then email them, scan them, send them to me on Facebook Messenger, and I really recommend trying that Adobe Scan app for doing just that. Would also like to mention that it's important that you submit your work to me in small batches, so like say groups of 5 to 10 assignments. This allows me to provide you with feedback quickly and to guide your future work. So this is an English course, and people learn to be stronger writers and readers by having their work read by somebody else, and you get some feedback, right? So with this course, it's it's not just me giving you like a 5 out of 7 or like a 7 out of 10, right? I give you a grade, and you will be graded on your work, but I think more importantly is I will give you some feedback to tell you what you need to do better next time, or what to think about. And it's like a lot of creative endeavors in life, whether you're a painter, a sculptor, a musician, a carpenter, or whatever you do, whatever kind of line of work you do, or whatever you're creating. It's important to get feedback from other people, because you often get too close to your work, is what they say a lot. Is like you're too close to it. You can't see what needs to be changed. You can't really tell what needs to be adjusted. So that's what I'm here for. And it really helps if you send me your work in groups of like 5 to 10 assignments. And you can send me one assignment. That's totally fine. You can send me 12 or 15, but I think that 5 to 10 is kind of the sweet spot. So I would try to go for that. If you want to contact me, that's how to do it. My email is on the screen. You can find me on Facebook. You can phone me at the WASA line. If you get the receptionist, ask for Mike, and you can also phone our long distance number if you don't want to get long distance fees. I do teach from 1 to 3, so it's hard to talk to me from 1 to 3, but on Fridays I'm here all day, so you can contact me 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And that's if you need to like talk to me back and forth, like on the phone or through Facebook Messenger. That's when I'm going to be the most responsive to students' questions. But that being said, if you send me an email at 7 in the morning, or 7 o'clock at night, or 2 o'clock in the morning, or whatever the case may be, I will make it a priority to answer your question right away. As soon as I come in at 9 o'clock, the first thing I do is I open my inbox, I check my phone, I check my messenger. So answering students' emails, answering student questions is my number one priority, as well as marking assignments. So here's your next steps. Here's your homework. So please contact me through email, Facebook, Messenger, phone. Read the study guide in Unit 1 of ENG4E. Read chapters 1 and 2 of Where the Rivers Meet, and complete key questions 1 through 5. All right, so let's get into it. So today's lesson, we'll look at images of the day. We will review our clauses and phrases. We will review our participles, which is a special kind of verb, or a different way of talking about verbs. And we're going to do a breakdown of key questions 9 through 15. So we're going to review the definition of a clause and a phrase, sentence building. So we're talking about sentence building. We're going to review the definition of a participle. Participles are verb forms, sometimes called conjugation. And we're going to take a closer look at key questions 9 through 15. And your success criteria, you'll know you've been successful if you watch today's class, listen to today's class, and pay attention, and respond to key questions 9 through 15 by using your understanding of the writing process. The difference between main and subordinate clauses, and participles. So we're going to delve into three areas primarily today. So talk a bit about the writing process, talk about clauses, which come in two big categories, main and subordinate, and we're going to end our understanding of participles. So it's very technical terminology, but I think it's also important to recognize that you know this stuff. If you can speak English well enough that you can have conversations with people, then guess what? You know these things. You know at least the clauses, and you know what a participle is, and you know how to turn a verb into different forms. You just may not know the names of it, right? You may not understand what it's called, but I guarantee you use it all the time. So here we go. So we got our images of the day up on the screen. These gave me a chuckle. Hopefully they make you laugh as well. So the first one is, my mom is an English teacher, and she says Santa's elves are subordinate clauses. So haha. The joke there being that subordinate means someone who's lesser than. So in a workplace, there's a boss, and the boss has subordinates, right? So that's what the elves are. This meme here says, did you mean to stop in the middle of a sentence, or was that a subordinate clause? Because as we'll see, often a subordinate clause will come after a main clause. But it can also start a sentence, right? So even though it's not the first sentence, even though it's not the first part of the sentence, so that's an important distinction that we'll make as we look at this. So don't confuse subordinate and main with being first or second. So sometimes the most important part of the sentence it comes after the first part of the sentence, right? So it all depends on how we write the sentence, right? So for example, if I say, during my trip to Winnipeg, comma, I visited, or I went to a Jets game, the Human Rights Museum, and Portage in Maine, right? So while I visited Winnipeg, that's the subordinate part, and then the main part of the sentence is I visited all these main places, right? Adverbs, adjectives, conjunctions, clauses, all never learn to speak English. So that's exactly what I was just talking about. If you know how to speak English, then you know what adverbs are, you know what adjectives are, you know what conjunctions are, you know what clauses are. You know them internally, but you may not be able to express them and say what they are. And I often like to use the analogy with being a musician. So a lot of musicians can't read sheet music, and they don't know a lot about music theory, but they're really good musicians and they can play, right? They just need to put a name to it. So let's just review here, okay? So a clause is a group of words containing a subject and predicate. Now the subject is what the sentence is about. It's a noun. And the predicate is what is said about them, or what they do, or what happens to them. So a group of words, and so a clause comes in these two basic categories. So there's independent. It depends on who you talk to. Sometimes you'll see it written as an independent clause. Sometimes you'll see main clause. It means the same thing. So a main clause, which is how our unit talks about it, that's a group of words that contain a subject and a predicate, and they can stand alone as a complete sentence. So every clause has a subject and a predicate, but the main ones, they can stand alone as a complete sentence. A subordinate clause or a dependent clause is a group of words that has a subject and a predicate, and they cannot stand alone as a complete sentence. And it also gets a bit confusing, but a sentence can have more than one main clause, right? Which is, so it's a bit, that's why I myself prefer the term independent clause rather than main, but just keep in mind that a main clause, or a sentence can have more than one main clause. So we have clauses and we have phrases. And so a phrase is a group of words that does not have a subject or predicate, or it doesn't have either. So it's a group of words. So when you're building a sentence, you build a sentence from phrases and clauses. And the main distinction here is that a phrase can never be alone as a complete sentence. And sometimes it does not have a subject, and sometimes it lacks a verb or a predicate, and sometimes it has neither. So one example is an adjective phrase. So on Thursday, we talked about adjective phrases and adverb phrases. So the adjective phrase functions like an adjective. So it sometimes it has multiple adjectives. So I bought a new red guitar. So new and red is a phrase that gives you additional information about the guitar that I bought. Sometimes these phrases can have comparative and superlative adjectives. So remember, superlative adjectives are like the best, the worst, the loudest, the quietest, right? So the best Christmas ever, right, is an adjective phrase that modifies the word this. So as we go through the chorus, we'll talk about different kinds of sentences. And so there's two basic categories. There's the simple sentence and there's the compound sentence. So the simple sentence is the most basic sentence. It's got a subject, it's got a verb, and it's a complete thought. And it can stand alone on its own. So it's just simply one independent or one main clause. And a compound sentence would be two of them joined together. Two independent clauses. So two things that could be a sentence on their own, but the author has joined them together. And if you want to join them together, you use a semicolon or you use a coordinating conjunction. And we remember that the category coordinating conjunctions is the fanboys. So for, and, nor, but, or, yet, or so. So there are 9 parts of speech. There's nouns, there's verbs, there's adverbs, adjectives. We have articles, we have conjunctions, we have prepositions, interjections. So we have 9 parts of speech, and conjunctions are one of them, and they join things together. That's what it means to be conjoined, and that's what a conjunction is. It's something that combines two different things. So here's some examples with these coordinating conjunctions. So the bridge out of town was closed, and the back road that connects the highways was washed out. So that's two sentences that are combined. So it's a comma followed by a conjunction and then another independent clause. Let's not fight about the past. Today is a new day. For today is a new day. She doesn't eat meat, nor does she drink milk from any animal. So it's just, so the conjunction, which is highlighted in that purplish pink color there, it connects the two ideas. And we can also use the semicolon to connect the two ideas, right? And I brought these examples up on Thursday, so just click through them quickly, right? So I grew up in a house full of music, and my father and mom were constantly playing their favorite albums. So two different ideas joined together with our friend, the semicolon, right there. We can also separate items in a list when the items contain commas, right? And so it's a way to avoid confusion. And I know when you learn these rules, some of them it's frustrating to learn so many different rules and to learn all this terminology, and it seems really confusing right off the bat, and it is. So if you feel confused by a lot of this stuff, that's totally normal. And I think a lot of that confusion comes from knowing how to speak a language. You know how to speak the language, you know how to have a conversation, you can watch TV, you can read magazines, you can read Facebook, you know the language, right? But then when it comes to writing it and to identifying what verbs are and what parts of speech are and what's a clause and what's a phrase, it gets frustrating because it's like it seems like you're adding this like unnecessary layer on top of what you already know. And so I just encourage you as an English student to sort of push past that frustration and just to realize that once you know this stuff, it's going to make you a stronger writer. It's going to make you a more sophisticated reader. It's going to really boost your communication skills. And I think, myself as a musician, I taught myself how to play guitar, never had lessons, and didn't know anything about musical theory, just knew how to sort of read. I could read like guitar music, which is called tab. It's not like as specific as reading sheet music. But then as I got older, I did a lot of research and I learned more about music theory, and I got really into it, and I could see how it helped me to write music and to figure out music and to play with others. So with that in mind, this is one way you can use a semicolon. So just for fun, this is my sentence that I wrote this afternoon. Just for fun, I created my dream NHL team. And then that is the colon, right? So the colon is the two dots. Semi means part. So the semicolon is like the dot and the apostrophe. We use the colon to introduce an idea. And the colon basically is like, and here it is. For example, right? That's what it's used for. So just for fun, I created my dream NHL team. And everything that comes before the colon should be a complete sentence. So it's Patrick Waugh, comma, goalie, and then a semicolon, Steve Yzerman, comma, center, and then a semicolon, Alex Ovechkin, comma, left wing, right? So this is my dream team with left wing, right wing, center, left D, right D. But the items in my list contain commas. So if I just had commas the whole way through, it would get really confusing. So it's just meant to make for a better experience for your reader. All right, so with that in mind, let's jump into our unit assignments, okay? Our key questions from Unit 1. So, key question 9. In approximately 1/2 page of writing, describe a funny experience you have had or have heard about in the past few months. In your paragraphs, use at least one adjective phrase and one adverb phrase to add color and variety to your writing. Remember to indent your paragraphs and also keep in mind the importance of good subject-verb agreement throughout. All right, so we talked a bit about this in our class on Thursday, but I wanna delve into this a little bit deeper and to give you some strategies here for writing this, for this assignment in particular, right? So what we're working on here is it's journal writing. So it's a 1/2 page of writing about a funny experience and one adjective phrase and one adverb phrase. Okay. All right. So we've got whoops. What is going on with my keyboard? Key question 9. So it's a... What is... I'm not sure what's going on with this keyboard. Okay, funny... the funny story... 1 to 2 paragraphs. And let's zoom in on that. So I'm just making some notes to myself. So it's got to be a funny story. It's got to be 1 to 2 paragraphs. I need to have one sentence with an adverb phrase and one sentence with an adjective phrase, and I need to demonstrate subject verb agreement, also known as subject predicate agreement. And so what I'm doing here is just doing some planning, right? Planning out the assignment, so I'm making some notes to myself. It's got to be a funny story, 1 to 2 paragraphs. So, and so I would do, step 1. I would, choose. I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. Okay, choose a funny story. So I'm going to do the time. Happening here. So I'm going to write about the time I brought my son to the wrong arena in Thunder Bay. So during a 3-on-3 hockey tournament. So that's what I would write about. So I've got my funny story. So I would do that for step 1. Come up with your funny story. And then just to make sure you get full marks here, step 2 would be to okay, what is going on here? Think about an adjective and an adverb phrase you can include in your assignment. And so for the adjective, I would think about something or someone in the story that you can describe. So I would describe my son. So I think at the time he was 10 years old. He was a boy. He was a goalie. He was young. He was, I don't know, he was excited. So that kind of thing, right? So, and then for your adverb phrase, I don't know what I am doing to make this keyboard jump all over the place here. Okay, adverb. I would say, think about something, or think about an action, a verb that you can describe. So I would describe how we drove to the right arena. So I don't know. I would say, frantically, quickly, chaotically. Yeah, that's basically what happened, right? Was you know, we realized we were in the wrong building and had to drive to get to the right building in time for the game to start. So hopefully that's helpful for you. You know, I would, every time you have to do a longer writing assignment in this course, it helps just to do a bit of planning. I gotta pick my funny story. I've got to make sure that I get at least one sentence with an adverb phrase. And then when you do that, it's actually just going to give you some ideas, right? And then, so one adverb phrase, one adjective phrase. So maybe, for example, like, I brought my 10-year-old son to a hockey game, right? And so in that case, 10-year-old. That's telling you information about son, right? So that's my phrase there. And then we could also say we close. So we got back in the van and frantically drove to I think it was Fort William. Whoops. What? And so I've got my adverb phrase. So remember, adverbs most commonly they're modifying words, and they modify how something was done. So in this case, drove. We didn't just drive there, we frantically drove because we were in a really big hurry. And just a little refresher, so a subject is what the sentence is about. Almost always a noun, and every time I hit shift, the predicate is what is said about the subject, what the subject does, or what happens to the subject. So, if I say I took my son to a hockey tournament in Thunder Bay in 2018 or whatever it was, then I is the subject, and then the predicate is everything that comes after. So took my son. And if I said I take my son to a hockey tournament, that'd be the subject and verb wouldn't be agreeing with each other. Because or I taking my son, right? I taking, I took is the right verb, right? So that's what we're getting at there. Okay, so that's enough on that one. Let's go back to our slides here. All right, so key question 10, part 1, main and subordinate clauses as 1. So given the following main clauses, create new sentences using a subordinate clause with each. So Jerry went fishing. I fixed the snowmobile. We traveled to Thunder Bay. Karen and Margie went to a party. Ken didn't have a truck. And so I think we did the Jerry went fishing example last class. So let's do just really quickly, let's do the I fixed the snowmobile example. So I fixed the snowmobile. Okay, so that is whoops. That's an independent clause because it has a subject, I. It's got a predicate or a verb, fix the snowmobile. So that's a complete sentence. And so we could do this a few ways. You could say, while John while John cut a hole in the ice, I fixed the snowmobile. Okay? So that is the subordinate clause, and that is the independent clause. So I'll use the same terms they use in the book. Main clause. So it's subordinate because it's while John cut a hole in the ice, I fixed the snowmobile. So it can't stand alone as its own sentence. It has to have that main part with it. Okay. So you could also say so we could keep this I fixed the snow machine, and then we could also try a different way to write that. We could say, well, let's try and change the order. So I fixed the snowmobile. Oh, we could just switch it. That'd be the easiest way. While John cut a hole in the ice. And then again, we still have the main clause is still here, right? So this is the main, and then over here is the subordinate part of the sentence, right? It's just when the subordinate part comes first, then you have to separate it with a comma. When it's written like that. When they get switched like that, then you have to do, this is the subordinate part comes first, and then the main part comes later. So same sentence, just put in a different order, right? So when you complete this assignment, it doesn't matter which order you come in. It's just you have to distinguish between them, right? So you have to have those. You have to say I fixed the snowmobile, but then you have to write a subordinate clause that can go along with it. So that is 10. So that's part 1. Key question 10 has 2 parts. So the second part, again, it's still talking about main and subordinate clauses as 1. So given the following subordinate clauses, add a main clause to create a complete sentence for each. So blank because it was raining, After changing the flat tire, blank while watching the hockey game on TV, before going to bed, blank, and because we ran out of bait. So let's try the after the changing the flat tire. And so it's same as what we just did last time. Oops. There we go. Okay, so after I fix the flat tire, oops, let's go back. Is that right? Okay. Just want to make sure I had the right wording. After changing the flat tire. After changing the flat tire, comma, I called my wife to let her know we'd be on our way home soon. Right? So, and then in that case, that's the main. And that one's really easy. You can pretty much write anything there, right? It's just after this happened, that happened. So it's just chronologically, right? So it should just make sense logically, you know, what comes next, right? And then it's a little bit trickier when it comes before, like while watching the hockey game on TV. You know, it's just adding a main clause, right? So when you add the main clause, it just, I guess the most important thing would be, you know, when adding a main clause, comma, the most important thing to remember is that it must be a complete sentence with a subject and a predicate. That has to be, right? So I called my wife to let her know we'd be on our way home soon, right? That is a that's a complete sentence, right? So that's I'll copy and paste that here. So the subordinate clause is after changing the flat tire, because there's no subject there, there's a predicate. The main idea is I called my wife to let her know we'd be on our way home soon. Okay? So that's the most important thing to keep in mind. Okay, moving right along. So key question 11 is sentence construction. Write 5 sentences on your own that will each include both a main clause and a subordinate clause. Try to include some adjectives and adverbs in your sentences to make them even more interesting. Okay, so hopefully you can take what I've just talked about, because just for time I want to keep moving along, but write a main clause and a subordinate clause, and then try to add some adjectives and adverbs to make it more interesting. Well, we can do that quickly. So if we go back to here and we say, look at that. I called my beautiful wife. Now I've got myself an adverb phrase. Look at that. I quickly called. So there we go. So I quickly called, that's an adverb phrase, and my beautiful wife, that's an adjective phrase, right? So I have modified the word wife and modified called, right? So that's, you can do that with your sentences. Okay, moving right along. Key question 12 is journal writing. So in approximately 1/2 page of writing, describe your favorite television program or a favorite book that you have read. So you could do a movie too, right? So a movie, a book, a TV show. They're both forms of media. In your paragraph, comment on the title of the TV program or book and give reasons why you consider it your favorite. Would you recommend it to others, and if so, why? Include at least one sentence that contains both a main clause and a subordinate clause. Underline this sentence, right? Okay. So one of your sentences has to have a main clause and a subordinate clause. And so, for that, I could give you an example of something you might want to try for this. You could say something like, although I enjoy many science fiction shows, my favorite television shows. My favorite one is the original Twilight Zone series. Right? So then I would underline that because it starts with a main clause, or sorry, a subordinate clause, and it ends with a subordinate clause, right? So just underline the one that you have, and then just tell me about, and then tell me which one has a main and a subordinate clause. Okay, let's see here. Let's go back and use the writing process that we talked about earlier, right? So generating ideas, finding a topic, brainstorming a list of what makes it your favorite. Try to come up with your main idea. Most TV shows, books, movies, it's a lot to talk about in one paragraph. So if you can really get specific and talk about a favorite episode or a favorite character, find something very specific that you can focus your writing on. Present and past participles. So given each of the following verbs, write both the present and past participles. So what's present and past? So laugh, talk, burn, write, close. So it's past and present, okay? Now using any 5 of the above present and past participles, create a sentence of your own for each one. So we were laughing at the funny things we saw on television. So remember when you write the participles, I think this will be the last thing we look at today, but you have the participle is like the full form, right? So when we're talking about participles, we're talking about verb forms. So if we have read, for example, in the present present tense, we would say, I am reading a great book right now. And then in the past, you would say, I read a great book last month. So, and then in the future, we might say, I plan to read what I hope is a great book next week. So, to read, read, and am reading, right? So those are the participle verb forms. So am reading, read, read, to read, right? So that's the full form of the verb. Okay, so that is all of the time that we have for today's class. We'll pick up on key question 13 tomorrow. We didn't quite get to 15, but almost. So we'll finish off question 13 tomorrow and keep moving along with the key questions. Thanks for tuning in. I will see you tomorrow.